else, in the first 2 days here in Vancouver, first class all the way. The fighters are not meatheads. These guys are smart. These guys are colorful. These guys can spin a tale. They know how to talk to the media. They know how to give the media what they want. It's actually been a pleasure to interview the guys at UFC as compared to many a locker room you walk into in sports. UFC and just the personality of Dana White and the entire crew that have been in Vancouver for a couple of days has me now saying, hey, you know what? I'm gonna start following this sport. Members of the media about coming into Vancouver and sneaking the event in this year. They were up against the clock and up against the wall to try and get it done, but they did.
It was actually getting down to the wire where it looked like we'd have to pull the plug and say, we can't do Vancouver right now. It got too close. We're going to have to come back either later in the year or next year.
Is that because of the Olympics?
No, because, well, we have so much time that we have. First of all, we have to put tickets. We have to pick where we're going. We have to get tickets on sale. We have to, do all these things. It was getting to the point where we were right there, and we were going to have to say, you know what? We want to come to Vancouver. We can get this thing worked out. We'll come back again either later this year or next year. And the mayor stepped up and got it done. That's literally the way it went down.
My buddy, Chuck Liddell, the 21-7 record.
I won.
Your thoughts of being in Vancouver, too, in Canada. You can't get into Ontario yet. You've been into Quebec and Montreal. Here you are in Vancouver for the first time, and hopefully you'll be back.
Oh, yeah, this is great. It's great to be here. I love this city, and it's going to be fun fighting here. The fans, Canadian fans are great. I mean, I fought in Montreal. It was loud. That's about as loud as it's been in the arena. So this will be the energy, and that's going to be great.
We're going to check in with Ariel Helwani of AOL Fan House and Versus.com. He is a Canadian who now lives in the States, but he covers and follows the UFC from start to finish.
It's actually been a lot of fun being here in Vancouver, especially as a Canadian mixed martial arts reporter who now lives in the United States. Always good to come back to Canada, and I definitely feel a lot of buzz. I knew there was going to be a lot of buzz for this event. This was the fastest sellout in UFC history, just around 30 minutes. When tickets went on sale in March, that's incredible. But even at the media workouts Wednesday at the Sheraton Hotel in downtown Vancouver, I had never seen this many television crews, media outlets, reporters, journalists. I mean, I'd never seen it, maybe times 2 or 3.
As you're touching on, here in Vancouver, I would agree. I'm looking at the $12 million or so they maybe had to drop in insurance. And even if it was a break-even affair, which Dana White said it wasn't today.
Oh, well, the UFC is already committed to the Canadian market. In fact, they just opened a Canadian office. 11 days ago, the ex-commissioner of the CFL, Mr. Tom Wright, was, he officially started. It was around like 2 or 3 weeks ago that they announced, but he, that he was going to be the head of operations here in Canada, but he officially started 11 days ago. They're going to have an office in Toronto. Obviously, their main goal is to get the sport legalized and sanctioned in Ontario. Martial arts is a big part of the culture here in Vancouver. Being here in the Pacific region and the influences of the old martial arts. I'm not talking about MMA. I'm talking about like the old martial arts, and it makes sense that MMA would be so popular here. So I hope it's a great city if no one's ever been here. And especially the fans on Saturday night, I have a feeling, just based on the fact that it was the fastest sellout in UFC history, that they're going to be hot and that they're going to be dying for the UFC to come back even before this event ends. So.
At least until this series here in Vancouver. But in the last couple of days, I've been very impressed the way they packaged it, how friendly everybody is, how intelligent the fighters are, how smart they are, how nice they are, how accommodating they are. I'm betting this is nothing new to you, though, right? Is it always a first-class show?
It is, and I must say, Brooke, I've had the opportunity working with AOL and Versus, we cover other sports as well, and I've had a chance to, attend NBA events, NFL events. There are no athletes out there like MMA athletes. You saw Pat Barry today at the press conference. This guy is just so happy to be here. He's so happy that someone wants to point a camera in his direction and talk to him. And you can feel that. And even a guy like Chuck Liddell, a guy that's been around the sport and he's accomplished everything, he's been around for so long, he wants to talk. And he won't give you the same answer twice. And that's what I love about these guys. They're so personable. They wear their emotions on their sleeve. And I think that it all starts with Dana White. It trickles down to these guys, and they get to see what it's like to deal with the media in a proper way. And I think at the end of the day, it's actually enjoyable covering these guys. These guys aren't barbarians. They're not buffoons. They're actually, sportsmen who are talented, and they deserve the attention that they're getting. I'm happy that finally these guys are starting to get the attention. And you're 100% right. And that's really, I think that's the the issue that the UFC and MMA are going to have to deal with for many years to come. There are a lot of people out there right now that are waiting. They're patiently waiting for a death to happen in the octagon. They're patiently waiting for someone to get severely injured. They're patiently waiting for an event to come to a new market like Vancouver, where there have been some issues, and some big brawl to break out. There are people who want to sort of jump on this sport, criticize it. They take any opportunity they can get to criticize it. And thankfully, of course, I can't look into there's never been a major injury in the UFC octagon since 1993 when the UFC was founded. There's never been a major death. There's only been one death in North America, and there's still some questions as to whether or not the fighter came in with a pre-existing injury, and that was on a smaller show. So, I mean, this sport, whether people want to like it or not, it's very legitimate. It's very safe, some will say, and I actually agree with them. It's safer than boxing. And hopefully, the doubters will soon turn into believers. And if not, who needs them? They are part of the old guard. They're probably, a little worried that, this sport that was once viewed as barbaric and called human cockfighting by Senator John McCain is now starting to take away some of its dollars. And they might never like it. But again, I don't think we need them. And I certainly don't think the sport is going anywhere anytime soon.
By the way, why?
I mean, just think of it this way. You can win an MMA match without throwing one punch. You can jump in there, you can take a guy down, you can submit him right away, and it's happened before. There have been fights that have ended, and a guy looked really bad, and he left the fight without a scratch on his face. Because you can go in there and you can submit an opponent, and you can never throw a punch in or land a punch, in a boxing match.
Ariel Helwani, who's knocking us out tonight here on Sports Talk, by the way. Ariel, what do you think of the card? How good is this card we've got for Saturday night?
I think you will get your money's worth. I think there are a lot of intriguing fights on the card, and it's often in the UFC, the fights that sort of fly under the radar are the ones that end up being the best. At the top, you have Chuck Liddell, the guy who in many ways put the UFC on the map a few years ago, returning. His last fight was at UFC 97 in April of 2009 in Montreal. After the fight, he lost to Shogun Rua. Dana White, the UFC president, said this is the last time you'll ever see Chuck Liddell in the octagon. Well, Chuck, I guess, convinced him. He looked good on Dancing with the Stars. He looked good on The Ultimate Fighter. And now he looks to be in the best shape of his entire career. He's ripped. He looks focused. And let's see if he has, another run left in him. He's fighting a guy, Rich Franklin, another guy that helped put the sport on the map a few years ago, who also needs a big win as well. He's coming off of a tough loss to Vitor Belfort in September of 2000. On his wall, he wanted to get his autograph before the fight. But this is an up-and-comer. It's sort of, again, two guys at the crossroads. One guy going up, perhaps. One guy maybe going down. And I want to see if Crow Cop has a little left in him. Or can Pat Barry sort of cement the fact that Crow Cop is not the old Crow Cop? And then you got a bunch of, great Canadian talent on the card as well. You got David Loiseau, who a lot of old-time UFC fans might remember, the Crow. He was a middleweight title contender. There's also Rory McDonald, who's from Kelowna, British Columbia. Local guy, 20 years old, 10-0. He's got a big fight against former WC welterweight champion Carlos Condon and Claude Patrick, another guy who fights out of Ontario, getting a chance to make his UFC debut here. I'm interested, but if you do buy it, I think you'll get your money's worth.
And Rory McDonald, BC, as you mentioned, out of Kelowna, but born in Quesnel, has spent some time living in Langley, too. You got a BC hook, you got some veterans, you got some names.